Good morning, everybody. You are listening to K-Talk Radio 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. And today is just an absolutely gorgeous day outside. The skies are blue, the sun is out, the temperature is fantastic. It is such a wonderful day out there. And today I thought we would talk about the first steps in entertaining a transaction. I have a friend out there by the name of Jason Smart who has an opportunity that we're going to check out later today. At least we're going to talk about over the phone later today, and thought, you know what, I might as well share some ideas for those on radio, for those listening right now who have wondered, you know, I'd love to fix and flip a house. I'd love to go in and, you know, tear down a wall like HGTV, put in a new kitchen, all of that good stuff. It, you know, because it looks fun, but the reality is it is fun. At least for me it is. I'm sure there's some people who probably hate the idea. But nonetheless, I thought what we would do is kind of dive into, you know, looking at a potential opportunity, kind of guessing, understanding if there's even, what's the word, even real opportunity to pursue it further. So I'll do a quick analysis usually, and within about 5 to 10 minutes I can tell if it's something that I really want to spend a lot of time dedicating towards, or if it's something that, you know, I'm just going to probably not spend that much time on just because the deal's too skinny. So definitely get your paper and pen out handy to take some notes, because we're going to talk about establishing the maximum offer that we could submit on a property that we can turn around and resell after we've remodeled it for a profit. Okay, so here's the formula. You take what's called the ARV, which is called the after repair value. Okay, and this is the value that you could sell for, obviously, after it's repaired, right? After you've gone in and remodeled it, you have now improved the property, and you now have what's called an ARV, after repair value, which you will pull comparables. Now, you're going to either need to have access to the MLS or a real estate agent who can help you, because a real estate agent's going to have access to the MLS. And I happen to be a real estate agent, so I have access to the MLS myself, so I can do this type of search myself when I'm looking at potential flips. So if you don't have the access yourself, contact a real estate agent who can help you with this. So first thing we do is we pull comparables on a particular address. So whatever address of the home is, you're going to typically want to research about a half a mile away. Typically appraisers like to stay very close to the home when they decide a value to appraise that house at as far as other comparable homes. You know, once you start going away further than a half a mile, you can really get into a completely different neighborhood. And obviously, depending on which direction, north, south, east, west, that neighborhood could change in value dramatically, you know, a mile away. We've talked about on this show before invisible lines. So for instance, State Street is an invisible line where values will change literally one block to the west of State Street to one block to the east of State Street. Another invisible line is, for example, 7th East. Homes that are east of 7th East, literally one block away, can be valued more than homes that are one block west of 7th East, right? Then you have streets like Highland Drive and Wasatch Boulevard. So you need to know these invisible lines. If you're, let's say, going north to south, you know, 2100 South is the same thing. North of 2100 South versus south of 2100 South can be different values. Now, when I say different, it's not often dramatically different. It could be 5 to 10,000 different. Literally, the house across the street, the house across the street on 7th East versus the other side of 7th East, it's maybe $5,000 to $10,000. But if your analysis, if your profit analysis shows that you want to make X amount of dollars and you're counting on that extra 10, or that 10, we won't even call it an extra 10, let's just say you're counting on that 10, and you pull comps from the wrong side of the street, you could hypothetically find yourself short $5,000, $10,000. It really just kind of depends what part of town as well, where these invisible lines are. So good to know where these invisible lines are, and that's why you want to stay as close as you can to the subject property within a half a mile. So now the second thing that we want to do is pull data that is typically newer data. Last 90 days usually is good data. I'm usually not going to pull comparables of homes that sold, over a year ago. I want to see what's selling right now within the last 90 days. And then, of course, you're going to compare homes that are very similar in square footage. Same square feet, same beds and baths for the most part. And you also want to look at above ground square footage. So is this house that you are doing this house that you're hypothetically entertaining to remodel, does it have a basement where most of the square footage of the home is underground, or is it a two-story where most of the square footage is overground, right? So above ground square footage also is valued higher than below ground square footage. So what you want to do is you want to take all these little factors in consideration within a half a mile, within a very recent amount of time, typically 90 days, and that's what you're going to look at to figure out, okay, what could I sell this house at once I fixed it up in this area right now, as if I was to put it on the market, immediately. And you're going to also look at the homes that, are the most relevant to the home of what your home will look like, I should say, once you're done remodeling it. So, for instance, you don't want to look at comparables of a home that's, it's nicely kept, definitely pride in home ownership, but it's not a fresh remodel with the colors that are most trendy, with the style that are most in fashion, that are demanding high price, right? Modern remodels, basically remodels that have a modern feel to them, tend to get higher dollar than, let's say, other type of remodels that have more of a country feel, or basically not modern, if that makes sense. So you're going to want to make sure that you're comparing those homes to what you think your home's going to look like when it is all finished, so you can get a good idea of what your home will sell for. So oftentimes people will ask me, how do you know what to do in a home when you buy it and want to remodel it? Believe it or not, you're just a safe way to approach that answer, basically approach that scenario, is copy what the other houses sold for, copy their remodel, what they sold for, that as far as the price that you want to sell at. So if I found a home that I want to sell, let's say for $400,000 once I've remodeled it, I will look at those freshly remodeled $400,000 homes in that neighborhood, because let's just say hypothetically those are the homes that are the highest priced. Then that is the price that I'm going to chase, hypothetically, and chase is probably not the right word, shoot for, because that is what the highest price homes are selling for in that area. Then I'm just going to look at the pictures and go, oh, that's pretty much what I'm going to do too. I'm just going to copy that. I'm not going to improve it more because I'm going to spend more money than necessary. I now know what I need to do to a home to get that $400,000 price point, if that makes sense. So basically what I'm going to do is look at all the pictures, figure out the homes that are selling for top dollar, and then duplicate my remodel like those homes so that I too can also get top dollar of what the market's asking. Okay, now once we figured out what this top dollar is, and this is so important, I would say a lot of new investors get hurt when they first start fixing and flipping houses, because they may tend to think they can get more than what's out there just because they don't know how to look at the data accurately. They may look at the wrong comp. They may look at the house on the wrong side of the invisible line. They're looking at the house on the east side of 7th East, but they're really a home that's on, let's just say, 2nd East, and so they're pulling comps, past 7th East. So though that data is going to be probably not the best data to pull, they could be, I've seen a lot of investors that force a deal to work when they're newer. They want to do a deal so bad so that they will just say, the top dollar is probably $400,000. But at 400,000, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. But I bet I can get 415. I bet I can get 415 because we're going to make it a little bit nicer than everybody, and then move forward with the transaction. The house doesn't appraise at 415; it appraises at 4, and now they're walking away with $5,000-$6,000 profit on the transaction, which hardly makes it worth doing, and that's if they come out positive, right? I've seen that time and time again with newer investors where their profit is so minimal, but and they'll admit to it. They said, yeah, we really just forced the deal because we just wanted to get it done. So you don't want to do that. The ARV is so important. Literally, this is why I can do an analysis in like 5 to 10 minutes and know if I'm going to even bother moving forward, because I know the minimum that I want to make on a transaction for it to even be worth my while to move forward. So once we've determined what the ARV is, then basically we work backwards from there. Now, you're going to minus 10% off of that ARV. This is a conservative analysis. I always analyze worst case scenario. If it's better, great, then I just made more money. I never analyze the best case scenario, because if it's not, then I lost money, or at least my profit's significantly lower. So the reason why we minus 10% off of what we think we can sell it for, so we're going to keep math really easy here. We're going to just pretend we can sell a house for $100,000, okay? Not likely here in Salt Lake City or almost anywhere in Utah. You're not going to find a house for $100,000 all remodeled. But for the sake of this example, for easy math, we're going to take $100,000 as our ARV. The value of the home, once it's fixed up, we'll turn around and sell for $100,000. I'm going to minus 10%. Why? Because 6% is going to be paid to real estate agents, right? Realtor is going to help you market this property. Real estate agents will typically take 3% to give to the buyer's agent who's bringing you the buyer, and then they're going to make 3% as well. So that 6% gets divided into 2 real estate agents, so you're going to pay 6% in real estate agent fees. Then you've got closing costs. As a seller, your closing cost when you go to the title company is typically going to be about 1%. As a buyer, buyers typically have a 3% closing cost. Their closing costs are a little bit higher because they're typically utilizing a loan. They're getting a loan from somebody, and so those fees are a little bit more expensive because there's a fee to borrow money. Going to the bank and borrowing money is not free. So there's a fee. So if you have 1% that you pay, 3% that the buyer pays, that's a total of 4%. Now I know you're wondering, well, why am I calculating the 3% that the buyer pays? Well, because typically in the market that we're in right now, buyers will oftentimes ask sellers to pay their closing costs. For anybody who's ever shopped recently or who has sold recently knows this. As a buyer, you asked the seller most likely if they'd be willing to pay your closing costs. If not all of it, some of it. And as a seller, you probably know because you received offers of buyers asking you to pay their closing costs. And again, if not all of it, some of it. So I'm planning worst case scenario. I'm planning that when I turn around to sell this, the buyer's going to ask me for the 3% closing cost to be paid for them. So if that's the case, then worst case scenario for me paying closing costs is 4%. Now, if that is how the transaction plays out, then I've already calculated my analysis when I go to sell, knowing what my profit will be, giving up that extra 3% to pay for the buyer. However, if I can negotiate, if we're in a hot market where we get multiple offers, the nice thing about that is a lot of buyers, to make their offer more competitive when they're shopping, will hypothetically not ask a seller to pay their closing costs. So let's just say you get as a seller, you receive 2 offers, both at the same price. Both of them offer you a full price at $100,000. In our example, we're using $100,000. One is asking you to pay 3% of their closing costs, all of it, and the other one's saying, hey man, I got the money, you don't need to pay my closing costs at all. You're obviously going to net more by accepting the offer of the guy who's going to pay his own closing costs versus the guy who doesn't. So, if I've done my analysis where I'm planning worst case scenario to pay for the buyer who's going to ask me, but then I get in a multiple offer situation, which pretty much happens a lot. If you're a freshly remodeled home, you're the nicest house on the market, everybody wants your home, then you're probably going to get an offer that is not asking to have you pay their closing costs, which means you just built in an extra 3% profit, which is fantastic. That can pay for the real estate agent fee that you're going to be paying, half of the real estate agent fee that you're going to be paying one of the realtors, right? So I plan for the worst, but negotiate to try and get the best. So that's why we minus 10%. So now we have our ARV, we minus 10%, which are those closing costs. Then we minus the repairs, whatever we think we can sell it, or remodel it for. So if it's going to cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to fix up the home, then from there I'm minusing that amount, right? Because that's an expense that I've got to make sure I get back. So if I spend, let's just say hypothetically for this example, $20,000 into the remodel, then in our example of $100,000 ARV, I've minus 10%, which is 10,000. That's why we're using 100,000 to keep the math easy. Now I'm minusing the 20,000 to fix it up. Okay, so now we've minus 20,000, so we're now down to 70,000. From here, all it is now is I just need to minus what I want to make. So if I want to make $20,000, then I'm going to minus another $20,000, and now I know what I need to offer. That is if you're paying cash. You have the cash in hand to do it yourself, and you don't need to borrow a loan. That's going to be the cleanest analysis if you're a cash buyer investor. However, if you're going to leverage hard money, you're going to go out and get a loan or private money or whatever money. As we mentioned earlier, money's not free to borrow. So if you go out and get a loan, then you also then will have to take in consideration the cost it's going to incur, the cost you're going to incur to borrow that money. So if it's going to cost you $10,000 to borrow hard money or private money or whatever money for a period of 4, 5, 6 months, you're going to need to take that in consideration as well, so you can offer accordingly to minus that expense if that's something that you need to do to make the profit that you want. So the reason why I say, as far as profit margin minus what you want to make, a lot of let's say educators out there will say, you know, you take your ARV, after repair value, times it by 70% minus your repairs, and now you have your MAO, MAO, maximum available offer. You've got your MAO. Well, the reason why I don't use that formula is because every house is different. And if I'm going to go into a house and do a full-blown tear down walls, change out the kitchen completely, rip out the bathrooms, put them in, then yes, I'm going to want to make a larger profit because I'm taking higher risk doing more to the home, versus the house that I'm going to go in and go, wow, this is one of those paint and carpets. I don't need to make, 20% profit on this, or whatever profit you are, using based off of a percentage calculation. I can now decide this is what I'd want to make if I flipped this house because there's so little work, if that makes sense. So take the ARV, minus 10% in your closing costs, minus your repairs, minus what you want to make, and again, if you're using hard money, minus whatever that expense will be. And now you know your MAO, maximum available offer that you can submit. And once you know your MAO, a quick conversation with the seller will tell you how close you even are as far as potentially buying this home as a flip. Now, if you're really, really far, there's other strategies that you could utilize. It might not be best for a flip, but if you did, let's say, some creative financing, you could buy the property long-term as a rental. There's also ways to do creative financing on a flip so that you don't have to go borrow hard money. But by just doing this quick analysis in 5 to 10 minutes, having a conversation with the seller, knowing what they want for the home, I can gauge how close I am to even structuring this deal to making it happen, or if I'm so far out, we're so far apart on what I could offer, on what they want for the home, maybe they're being unrealistic, or as far as the condition of their home, whatever it may be, then I know that might not be a house I want to spend as much time trying to work and get done, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's time for a commercial break. When we come back, though, we are going to talk about a big announcement, for me at least, that I want to share with you guys that kind of evolved last week when we had Jonas Tsuji as our special guest. For those of you who may recognize that name, Jonas was on Survivor, I don't remember, like 10 years ago. So he was he's from Utah County. He represented Utah on Survivor, so for some of you, you may remember him. But before Jonas was a real estate professional, he was in the food industry. He used to be a sushi chef. And after the show was over and the mics were turned off, we started catching up, talking. I haven't spoken to him for a while, just due to the whole social distancing. I haven't spoken to a lot of people for a while. But anyways, I kind of shared with him what I'm working on as a new side project, and I have been asking almost everyone I've been in contact with who I know as a friend since January. Keep in mind, we're in May. Since January, if they knew anyone who's ever pursued this type of product in this type of industry. And nobody I know has ever done anything like this until last week when I spoke to Jonas. He shared with me he's actually done it. So I now officially have some first steps on action taking that I'm going to be taking over the next here, I don't know, first several, or maybe 12 months, 24 months. I don't know how long it's going to take to make this happen, but want to share what this product is with you guys live on radio when we get back from commercial break. With smartphones and technology making life a little easier, the Snap Leash has also been designed to make life a little easier for you and your pup. Whether you're out on a stroll in the park, or possibly a walk through the city, or maybe even a hike up in the mountains, the Snap Leash is the perfect leash for you. The Snap Leash can easily and conveniently convert into 7 types of leashes, making the Snap Leash the most convenient leash in the world. What other leash do you know that is 7 leashes in one? The Snap Leash having appearances on the Today Show in New York City, TV 47 in Dallas, Texas, and ABC4 right here on Midday, Utah. You are definitely going to want to take a peek at what the Snap Leash can do for you and your best friend. Make life a little easier for you and your pup, and visit www.snapleash.com today. Alright guys, we are back. You're listening to Key Talk Radio 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. And as we have been talking about for the first half of this show, is basically determining what the ARV is on a property. ARV meaning after repair value on a property, so that you can decide what you can sell a home for after you fix it up. You know, these shows that we watch on HGTV where they go in there and do full-blown remodels is something that looks fun, and quite frankly, it is fun. It's really fun. I've always been a creative-minded individual. I've always enjoyed more of an artistic type of activity, and I like it's like an art project. I like taking an ugly house and making it the prettiest house in the neighborhood. And so, in order to figure out how we can figure out basically which opportunities are going to be good opportunities to do this, we talked about the analysis of determining what you could resell it for, minusing backtracking to what you can buy it for. So if you've missed any part of that, definitely go to our social media, basically www.utahhomesweethome.com. You can click on the YouTube channel. We film all these shows so that you can rewatch any of them in case you missed it. Also, Key Talk Radio creates a podcast of all the shows that are on K Talk, so if you missed it, you can also go to K Talk's podcast as well. Okay, so wanted to share basically a big announcement, for me at least. I have been kicking the idea around for a very, very long time about bottling my wife's salad dressing, okay? But I know nothing about the food industry. Now, I normally wouldn't take on a project that's going to be so time-consuming, so exhausting, such a marathon, unless I really, really believed in it. And I'll tell you, everybody who's ever tasted my wife's salad dressing literally loved it. Like, everybody. There wasn't anyone who was like, wow, this salad dressing, like for them to actually make a comment, like no one asked them, hey, what do you think about the salad dressing, right? No one asked them. But like literally when we host parties, everybody asks, hey, what salad dressing is this? And it's just basically a salad dressing that my wife makes. So, I mean, over the years, over the decade, longer than that, because I've known my wife, gosh, a long time, almost 20 years. So over the almost decades, everybody who's ever tasted the salad dressing really, really enjoys it. And I invented a product called the Snap Leash. Invented this product a long time ago. Now, I'll tell you the story really quickly here of how I came with the idea of the Snap Leash and why I didn't want to, jump in and start bottling my wife's salad dressing right off the bat. For those of you who have heard this show before, you may know that I used to be a hairstylist to the stars in New York City. I used to cut Anderson Cooper's hair on a regular basis, every 3 weeks. I lived in New York City for 18, 19 years. That's where I met my wife. She's from New York City. And so I would go into the CNN studios, I would go over to Anderson Cooper's house, I would go pretty much wherever he needed me to go because he was always on the go, flying from one part of the country to the other, reporting news. And so I was his personal hairstylist. Also did people like Matthew Broderick, Joan Osborne. And so in a previous life, I was a hairstylist to the stars in New York City before I ever got involved in real estate. Then, one day, I'm walking to the subway on 94th in Amsterdam. For those of you who have been to New York City or know it, 94th in Amsterdam is where I lived. It was 2 blocks from Central Park, so it was phenomenal neighborhood. I really love the neighborhood. Upper West Side. Basically, for those of you who have ever seen the show, Seinfeld. Where I lived is basically the neighborhood that Seinfeld takes place in. Okay, so I was leaving my house. I had actually left my apartment, walked to the corner of 94th in Amsterdam, which is the corner of where my apartment building was, and I was actually on my way to cut Anderson Cooper's hair, believe it or not. And I'm standing there on the corner of 94th in Amsterdam, and I'm looking across the street, and across the street is a bodega. Now, for those of you who don't know what a bodega is, because we grew up in Utah, because I didn't know what a bodega was until I moved to New York City. Bodega is like a mini grocery store, kind of like a convenience store. You could almost, some people might even compare it to like a 7-Eleven, but bodegas are typically run by mom and pops, and so unlike a 7-Eleven, where every 7-Eleven that you walk into, they all have the same feel, because it's the same design that they have to build a 7-Eleven with. Bodega, they all feel a little bit different, but for the most part, it's a mini grocery store. So across the street is this bodega. And there is a young lady, gosh, I don't know, maybe 110, 120 pounds, petite young lady, probably in her 20s, across the street, who's trying to tie her big golden retriever to a pole. It was a parking, no, it wasn't a parking meeting, it was a big light post. Because she wanted to go inside the bodega to buy a coffee. So she was struggling tying this big dog around the pole. Because the dog doesn't want to be tied, it's pulling, and she's pulling, and they're having a tug of war, and the dog is winning. And as I'm standing across the street, I think to myself, gosh, there's got to be an easier way to secure your pup quickly, safely, and easily for a quick run into the bodega and out, or run into the bank and out. Because in New York City, just for those who've never been there, we don't have yards, right? So when we have a dog, it's not like we open up the back door and the dog goes and gets a little bit of exercise in the backyard. We have apartments. So we take our dogs everywhere, to the bank, to the post office, get groceries, wherever we're going to go run errands, so the dog gets exercise. And you'll see a lot of dogs secured, typically on a parking meter or a light post, but for a very, very short time. Nobody's going in grocery shopping for, 20 minutes and leaving their dog out. It's like literally running in, grabbing a bottle of water or something, coming back out. And you'll see that in a lot of food venues, because you can't take dogs into food venues. So little, like a bodega or little bakeries, you'll see dogs secured outside. So in my head I'm thinking, man, there's got to be an easier way to secure a pup. And as she finally gets the dog tied up and goes into the store and gets her coffee, but by this point the lights turn green and I'm crossing it now, and she comes back out, and she's got her coffee in hand, and the whole time she's inside the coffee shop, or the bodega I should say, getting her coffee, this dog is pulling that knot tighter and tighter that, on the leash that she tied. And so now she comes out, she's got her purse in one hand, a coffee in another hand. Now she has to untie this knot. She's going to put her purse on the dirty ground or her coffee on the dirty ground. And now she's got to get her dog to continue on her way. And I'm thinking, gosh, there's got to be an easier way to now unsecure your pup. And instantly, just instantly, the concept of the snap leash came to me in my head. And I thought to myself, wow, that would be amazing. Someone should do that, right? Like, how many times have you guys had a good idea and thought, wow, someone should invent that? Because I'm not in the pet industry. I was a hairstylist. I was going to cut Anderson's hair. I'm not going to invent a dog leash. So after that day, because of the concept now being in my head, I started to notice more and more and more dogs being tied up to poles or parking meters out in New York City. And every time I'd see that, I was like, dang, somebody really needs to invent this, what turned out to be the snap leash. Somebody really needs to invent this leash that's in my head. And I would say I had the idea for 4 years where I walked around New York City seeing dogs tied up outside of, venues, grocery stores, banks, post office, thinking someone should do that. And one day, 4 years later, I thought to myself, why not me? I'm a hairstylist. I have no idea about the hair industry, but why not me? Why can't I be the one who goes out and creates it? So, 4 years after the fact of thinking of the idea, I finally hire a patent attorney who does a patent search to make sure the invention's not, doesn't exist already. And we find out that through the patent search, which is, by the way, if you have a great idea and you think you want to pursue it, a patent search is very inexpensive. And the first step to, obviously, before dumping a bunch of money in a new invention that already has been invented, because you don't want to do that. So you do a patent search. At the time, it was, I think, $250. I think it's still under $500. I think it's relatively cheap. So it's been a while. I don't know how much the costs on patent searches have gone up, but nonetheless, it's very inexpensive. So, got a patent search, found out that the leash was not patented. Well, I was living in New York City where costs are higher, and at the time, we're going back a while ago, I then proceeded to hire a real estate attorney, and through a referral somehow, I hired one in Washington, D.C. I lived in New York City, but I hired one in Washington, D.C. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was about $10,000 to $15,000 to pay the patent attorney. But some of that cost actually goes to paying a fee to own a patent, right? So not all of it went to the attorney. You have to pay the government to own the rights of a patent. So it was about $10,000 to $15,000 of an investment. So I went through this whole process, patent pending, to patent, and basically I was informed because the patent process was so behind that I got into patent pending status, but was in patent pending status for 2 years before the patent was officially issued. 2 years later, I finally got the patent. However, you are allowed to move forward and progress and sell under patent pending status. So, was in patent pending status for 2 years, then 2 years later in the mail I got the certificate informing me that I am a full-fledged inventor and own the patent and the rights to the snap leash, right? And so, from there, basically, we went out and, I went out and started to try and figure out how to get this thing produced, how to get it made, met with all sorts of manufacturers, and from Brooklyn to Queens, and basically, just so you guys know, from the time that I officially hired an attorney to do a patent search to the time we finally had our first leash in hand to sell, took 14 years. 14! For me to say that, I can't believe that I even, stuck it through that whole entire marathon. Now, it wasn't like I worked on this 9 to 5 every single day for 14 years. If I had, then that would have probably been condensed into a lot shorter period of time. I was still a full-time hairstylist, working 5 days a week, 40, 50 hours a week as a hairstylist. So, it was only on nights and weekends that I had, or I should say designated extra time to try and keep building, pursuing this, dream of mine to take the snap leash into market, that I utilized. It was a very minimal time. And on top of that, I didn't even know the pet industry at all to even know what my next steps were, right? It wasn't like I could sit here and figure out, okay, now I know, if somebody told me, hey, I want to open a salon, I could give you the roadmap to opening up a salon, but I had no roadmap to inventing a dog leash and bringing it to market. So it was a very slow process, a very long process, and again, you're doing this on a part-time level, but, the beautiful thing is that I didn't quit. And because I didn't quit, which would have been so easy to do because it just seemed like it was never going to happen, today, we're selling worldwide. The Snap Leash is selling, thank goodness for the internet, we can sell worldwide, right? So we're fulfilling orders from different countries, from Australia to England to Canada, and all over the U.S. as well. So after 14 years of going through the pain and agony of learning how to invent a product, patent a product, have a product developed, have it made, then start the whole process of actually getting it out there, took a very long time. So knowing that, I did not want to go through the process of doing this for salad dressing. I was like, oh my gosh, I am not going to go through that again. Which is why I've just never thought about doing it until last week when Jonas Atsuji was our guest. As of January, I thought, you know what, I'm ready to take on a new project. I find the beginning of starting new businesses very fun for me. It's like, a new flip, basically, taking a new fix and flip. And chat with Jonas, and I said, he's asked me, what's going on, what's up, and what have you been up to? And I said, just same old, fixing, flipping houses, helping clients as a real estate agent, buy and sell homes. But on the side, I've recently, started to try and pursue how to bottle salad dressing. I've been studying it like crazy on Google and YouTube, and I asked Jonas, I said, Jonas, do you know anyone who's ever bottled anything? And he looked across the, this. For those of you who are listening, there's a desk here. He looked across the desk to me and goes, dude, I've bottled a food product before. And I was like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, totally. He goes, what you need to do is you need to get in contact with a food scientist, because a food scientist is going to break down your ingredients to be able to put all of the stuff that's required by law on that sticker that is on every food product that we buy at the grocery store, right? That's the sticker we look at when we're on a diet to see how many calories there are and the Twinkie we're about to buy. Basically, you have to hire a food scientist to create that label, to help you create the information for the label. So he's like, here's a contact for you. She's a food scientist. She works over at BYU. And I was like, holy cow. Now I literally had my first action item that I needed to take. So I obviously reached out to this individual, and here's what's exciting. She texted me last night. Jonas made a text introduction to the two of us last Saturday after the show. I followed up earlier this week with a phone call, and she texted me last night to give her a ring today. So I'm extremely excited because I get to chat with somebody who now knows what to do for the next steps. Now, Jonas and I chatted, obviously bottling it, once we know, because we have the recipe, once the food scientist provides the information we need to put on the sticker, getting the sticker mass produced is going to be easy. Obviously we have to come up with the logo, but getting the sticker mass produced will be easy. Have done that before with the Snap Leash, so no big deal there. And buying bottles in bulk will be easy. I've already researched that. You can go onto different websites and buy bottles in bulk. And basically just now have these stickers put onto the bottles, and then obviously the next step after that will be, how do we mass produce this salad dressing, because it's not like my wife's going to sit in the kitchen all day making tons and tons of salad dressing. So I don't know what I don't know yet, but what I do know is I don't know a lot. And so I'm very excited that I'm going to be at least taking my first action steps by meeting this food scientist and progressing forward. But here's what's going to be really cool about it. I wish I would have done this with the Snap Leash, but YouTube didn't exist back then. I wish I would have documented the process that I took every time I was meeting with a new manufacturing company in Brooklyn or in Queens or wherever, or meeting manufacturing company owners. Sometimes we met in delis in Manhattan just because their manufacturing building and company was in Brooklyn or Queens, just because the real estate's cheaper out there than Manhattan. But these guys lived in Manhattan, and I lived in Manhattan. So we would be talking, and they said, well, let's just meet at a diner in Manhattan. And so we would meet and then have these meetings, and I had all these meetings with all these manufacturing companies. I wish I would have documented that process via video, YouTube. Now maybe not the actual meeting, but I'm going to be doing that for this salad dressing. So here's what I think is going to be cool. For anybody out there who's ever thought about inventing a product, or has a food product that they think they could bring to market, or any kind of idea that they've been kicking around for 4 years, like me, I kicked around the idea of somebody should make that leash for 4 years before I finally took action. I'm going to document my successes and failures along the way, taking this salad dressing from zero, nothing. Like right now, it's nothing but an idea, and not only is it not just an idea, but I know nothing about the industry for it to even be like a good idea. So I'm going to document the process from now to the point where we officially have it bottled, to the point where we actually can land a contract in a grocery store where we can sell it, to the point where however high we can take this. And it might be a 12-month project, it might be a 24-month project, it might be a 36-month project. I have no idea. It could be like the snap leash and take 14 years. I have no idea. But I'm going to document the process because, like the snap leash, I have fully committed my mindset that I'm not going to quit until it's done. If this takes 14 years, then I'm going to be documenting for 14 years before I finally have a bottle of salad dressing in my hand that I can hold and show that I completed that marathon. Of course, now we have to take it to market and sell it. But if it takes 14 years to just get it done, then I'm going to document it for however long it takes. Now, I hope it doesn't take 14 years, and I know a lot more today about starting businesses than I did back then. And back then, I had no mentors. YouTube didn't exist. I don't even know if Google exists. I don't even think the internet existed, to be honest, back when I thought of this idea. So obviously, we're in a different time where information is a lot more easier to find. Mentors, for me, have become a huge part of my life in real estate and business, and so now I'm willing to just pay people to take me to the shortcut to get it done versus figuring it out from scratch like I did, a long time ago. It took 14 years to get it to market, but we've now been on market for, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years. So I mean, we're talking like a long time ago. Over 20 years ago is when the idea popped into my head. So however long it takes, I'm fully committed to running this marathon as long as it takes to hit the finish line. So you can check out, I'm going to probably call the playlist Entrepreneurial Playlist or Daily Diary. If you go to our YouTube channel, and the way to access our YouTube channel is go to our website, utahhomesweethome.com, click on the YouTube link, find the playlist that's called Entrepreneurial Playlist. That's probably what I'm going to call it. And that way you can follow the process from start to finish, so that if you have an idea of a invention or whatever that you want to take to market, maybe watching me through my failures and successes along the way will help you know what your next steps are, and obviously will help you avoid the bad steps that I'm going to be taking along the way that are going to be creating some of my failures. But of course, as long as you don't quit, it's not technically a failure. It's only a failure if you quit. If you don't quit, you will eventually succeed. So I'm going to be documenting this on our YouTube channel, so definitely check it out, and hopefully that will help some people along the line of pursuing their dream, pursuing their product. Maybe you're working a 9 to 5 that you hate and would love to start your own company. Well, then this is a great opportunity to possibly watch somebody go through the ups and downs, so that you know what mistakes to avoid. Okay, so when I come back, we are going to continue talking about this type of stuff. For those of you who don't know, I've also published a book. That educates children on the prevention of sexual abuse, a super tricky topic that I found very few people brave enough to tackle. And so I decided to tackle it because it is a massive problem. And we're not going to talk about sexual abuse, but we're going to talk about how I hired a mentor, Richard Paul Evans, who helped me, who believed in the book and helped me get it published. So that was a lot easier to do. That did not take 14 years. In fact, I think that took less than a year, because when you have a mentor who can tell you, for those of you who don't know Richard Paul Evans, he's like a 14, 15-time New York best-selling author here locally in Utah. And he wrote The Christmas Box. Anyways, very famous author. Luckily, because I had a mentor teach me how to publish a book, it took less than a year, where no one taught me how to produce an invention in a pet industry, so that took a lot longer. But when we come back, we're going to chat about that as well, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Yoshi Shiraki, the author of the book, My Body's Just For Me, the book written for children to educate children on the prevention of child abuse. With the assistance of multiple best-selling author Richard Paul Evans, we were able to publish this book as a tool to help break the ice in an easy and innocent way to help children understand and learn how to speak up and communicate. I've been invited numerous times onto Good Things Utah to discuss the importance of good communication with your child in regards to abuse, and also to discuss how the book, My Body's Just For Me, is a great tool for every parent when having that tricky conversation with their children. For more information on the book, My Body's Just For Me, please visit www.protectourangels.com today. And remember, the more we focus on prevention, the less we'll have to focus on rehabilitation. All right, we are back. It's K-Talk Radio 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we talked a little bit about the first half of the show, how to decide if a house is a good potential fix and flip property. We worked the analysis backwards to know what you can offer on a home based off of what you can sell, based off of the cost to repair it, based off of the expenses you incur, based off of everything to figure out if a home will be a good potential fix and flip property. And if you missed any part of that, don't forget to check out our website, utahhomesweethome.com. Click on the social media link, YouTube social media link to be specific. We have multiple social media links. But click on the YouTube one. We film and document all of these shows, so that if you missed it, you can always go back and listen to it. Then we talked about kind of a big announcement for me. I'm about to start a new business venture in an industry I know nothing about, but here's what's exciting. I'm going to document the whole process for you guys so that you can learn from my mistakes. As you know, on this show we have what's called the Nightmare Story segment. The reason we have the Nightmare Story segment is because a lesson is typically learned from a nightmare. And so I have all my guests, every guest that's ever come in, share a nightmare story. And the reason we do that is because I want them to share a story and the lesson they learned from that story, so us, the listeners, whoever is listening, does not have to learn that same lesson, because we can learn it from somebody else. Those are my favorite lessons to learn, from somebody else's mistakes, right? And so I'm going to be documenting the process of starting this new company in an industry I know nothing about, and allowing you guys to learn from my mistakes. Hopefully I'm going to have some successes that you can learn from as well. But if you've ever thought about starting up a new company, you've got a great idea for a new invention on whatever, a skateboard or a food product or a pet product, whatever it may be, bike, cycling, whatever your passion is, you've thought of an idea, then I think you're going to want to definitely subscribe to my channel, because we're going to be sharing our venture along the way of taking this idea that's literally nothing, and eventually, hopefully soon, getting it into grocery stores and selling. Okay, so want to share a story here real quickly. Just maybe the thing that you want to do is publish a book, right? I had a mentor by the name of Robert Allen, who's another like 14, 15 New York best-selling author, wrote the book No Money Down. He's a real estate guru, one of the most successful real estate educators out there. And he shared that everybody should write a book. If you've got a story that you think is intriguing, you should write a book. And the reason for it is books and products in general make great extra streams of income, because it's not something that you're out there constantly selling door to door. Once you do the marketing, get the business going, build the branding, can drive traffic, leads, buyers, then a book can hypothetically sell, and especially now with the internet, it sells while you're asleep. And Robert Allen, being a 15-time New York best-selling author, he's shared many times on stage that he believes everybody's got a story. Whatever that story may be, it might not be interesting to, let's say, your immediate friends and family, but there's somebody else in this world who might have gone through what you're going through, who could use that story to help motivate them. I'm friends with Tyrone Smith. Tyrone Smith is the receiver at the University of Utah, and he's had, I think, 2 or 3 foot surgeries that has slowed down his ability to basically play football at the U. He's had to take a couple seasons off, and chatted with him. And what I love about Tyrone is that his mindset is strong. He's had these surgeries that could have possibly really ruined the mindset of most people, because now they obviously if you're getting foot surgery twice, you're in 2 different seasons, it's a downer if you're not playing the sport that you love. But his mindset's so strong, he really truly believes in his heart that he's just as strong as he was before, and he's got a story to tell. Think of all those high school, collegiate kids that have gone out there and got injured, and now they're needing to get surgery. He's got a story that is showing success. He's going to be playing his senior year this year, assuming the season never starts with COVID-19. But his story can definitely help inspire younger, high school kids or other college kids. So the point is, everybody's got a story that somebody out there can relate to. So long story short, my mother actually is the one that came up with this idea. My niece, Delaney Finnegan, was born 16, 17 years ago, long time ago. Well, not super long. She was the first grandchild of my parents. So my sister had a child before I did, and Delaney was the first. So my mother thought that it would be a great idea for me, for my sister, to educate Delaney on the prevention of this tricky topic, sexual abuse. My mom did a great job of educating me and my sister when we were little. And so I actually had gone out to Barnes & Noble's to buy a book so I could give to my sister, so she could, basically give to Delaney, and, well, not give to Delaney, read to Delaney and help her understand, because she was only 3 or 4 at the time. Well, at the time, there was no books out that were something you could read to the child. There were books that parents could read to themselves on abuse, and then from there have a conversation with your child. So my mom thought, well, let's write a book. Let's write a book that we can, that's for the child, that the parent can read, but the pages, the kid can turn the pages, and it's a kid-friendly book. And so that's what we did. We hired Richard Paul Evans as a mentor to take us through this process. And like I said, I'm always willing to pay for mentorship if it shortcuts the process, and it did. He helped us get the book published in less than a year. And now, obviously, the book's been selling, and you can check it out at protectourangels.com. It's a children's book designed for as little as 3-year-olds that can look at the images. My wife did the illustrations. She was an art major, so that was really cool that she could be part of the project. And long story short, we were able to get that done. Again, I wish I would have documented that process. So we are going to document the process, though, of this salad dressing. I think that it will bring value to a lot of people out there across the world. That's the great thing about YouTube, is across the world. Ironically, this YouTube channel on this show, Utah Homes We Home, is getting national attention. Viewerships are coming in from different parts of the country. It is YouTube, so anyone can watch it from anywhere, but people are chiming in from Florida, Georgia, commenting on real estate comments, so it's been pretty cool. So I wanted to share that big announcement with you guys. If you've got an idea, I think it's a great idea to just take action and go do it. So we've come to the end of our show. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's show, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the weekend.